Hi everyone, welcome back to another session. About 2 weeks ago, I was contemplating and saying, God, what should I do with this channel and what do you require of me? And then the last Sunday in January came my dance colleague and member of Law Dance Ministry, called me up and she started to ask me some questions about my life story. And I said to her that I won't go any further and disclose anything further to her until she actually told me why she needed my story. And she said, but it's not your story. It's for you to share yourself to the world. So as promised, here goes. For me, as I stated before in my session to commence this Patwataal journal journeys, like the phoenix, I rise from the ashes, and that was my story about how I moved from one parish in Jamaica to Kingston 12, and I started to go to school in Johnson Primary. And being a one-stream student, I was in 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. Didn't go to 5th grade. So I went straight from 4th grade into 6th grade, 6-1. And that year, I did my common entrance. And there was a lot of discrepancy and controversy in the exam results, and it wasn't revealed, it wasn't broadcast. And what the government did was they just placed persons in schools in the communities that they were going. And so I was placed at Charlie Smith Comprehensive High School. To all the Woolmerans out there, Shelley and Fraser Price, or Jamaican Pocket Rocket, Sprint Star, and Baza, my deacon, aisle 5, seat 5, row 5 in church, 8GGA, Baza, all the Woolmerans, big up yourself. That's where I wanted to go, but I didn't go. So I went to Charlie Smith Comprehensive High School and started out in one stream again, doing my best, getting the grades, and just on this stream and this drive to succeed. And because of my father, who's a disciplinarian, it was always about educating yourself and stratifying yourself. Doesn't matter where you're coming from, but it matters where you want to go. So there I was, stratifying myself education-wise. A lot of people might still think that you don't need an education or a university education to be precise to succeed. But I chose that route when I looked at my circumstances. We were living in Kingston 12 and went to Johnson Primary School. We moved away and we moved to Waterhouse, which, coincidentally is the same community that Shelley and Fraser Price is from. We were living up to the other side, closer to the boulevard at first, Unity Drive. And Daddy was like, no, we need to find a home of our own. So he bought a property in, I would call it the Caribbean section of Waterhouse, because he had Barbados Avenue, Antigua, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, Grenada, and Anguilla. So it was the Caribbean section of Waterhouse, and we were in the middle of that section, and it was good and everything. So I got my education, my secondary school education at Charlie Smith Comprehensive High, and Mrs. Chevans, Pauletta Chevans, she was an amazing English teacher, and I was the most outstanding student in her class at that time while I was there. And I was tasked with doing the vote of thanks at my graduation as well. I graduated at 16, and Barbara Gludan was the guest speaker at graduation. It was just such an awesome time for me. And Pauletta Chevans, her husband Barry Chevans, in my tertiary education, he had an impact on my life as well, and which you'll learn about in session 2 of this video, because it will take more than one session to talk about my story and how I evolved, getting myself educated, and from grassroots, from the fire, rising from the ashes like a phoenix, from grassroots to getting educated to being, a professional in my field of administration, which I ran away from, and you'll hear a little bit about that. So after in my exam years, I had we were locked in, and in the latter part of my studies, I was very good at it, and then I tapered away. I wanted to explore. So when I was supposed to go to Saturday classes, I went with my friends to the movies and Burger King, of course. It just opened. And that impacted my studies. Didn't get all my exams at that time, but I got enough. So my next step was Alpha Business College, where I went to Alpha Business College, and Sister Mary Agatha was very nice and everything. But me, I have a stubborn streak in me, and I was doing Greg shorthand, and I was in room 7am with a batch of friends that I can't forget. They were so lovely, Ava being one of them, and Judith was at NLA the last time we spoke, and we had a good time in room 7am. Diverse set of us from different backgrounds, but at Alpha Business College we became one, and Sister Mary Agatha was just so awesome with us. In my shorthand exam, I was doing my Greg, but there were different facets to the exam: dictation, translation, and drafting. And I had one piece of draft paper which I didn't hand in, but I didn't think it. I thought it was garbage, so I dumped it. And of course I passed my 70 words per minute at Greg shorthand, but my teacher, she said I had to repeat because I didn't hand in that scrap paper. I was devastated, of course, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing this. And I was no, I'm not doing it. So I decided that I'm not going back to school, because all my friends will be promoted to 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. and I'll be still going back into 7 a.m. for something I actually passed, but just a misunderstanding. But that's life, and you learn. If I was more mature, then I would have looked at it differently. But that's how I looked at it, and I was very mad and upset. Notwithstanding, I decided I didn't want to go back, but my mother took me back to January, and Sister Mary took me back, of course, and I started again. But a little further into doing my CPS course, I'm like, no, I don't want to be a secretary. I don't want to be in administration. So, of course, I took my school fee for my next term, and I left home at 17. And for sure that there were sibling issues in the home, couldn't get along, and and I decided, I think I need to go from here. And it was a hard task. I went to live with my girlfriend and her mother. They didn't treat me anyway, but I just stayed there for probably a week or two, and then that was it. So then I was in Ocherius. I was living with my aunties, Auntie Vivian. She's in Trinidad and Tobago. No, I love you so much, Auntie Vivian, and Auntie Chin, my BFF too, and my aunt, Auntie Chin. Such a blessing in my life. But all the job I could get at that time was either the hotels, waitress, no, nothing is wrong with that, or bartending. And I'm like, but God, I want more for me. So I cried out to God. I didn't even know him like I know him now for myself, but I cried out to him and I said, God, please get me a job that I could go back to school and finish my studies and elevate myself further, stratify myself further as a young person with adverse backgrounds, adverse situations, coming in family situations, being on my own at 17. And my mom was sick 2 years prior, and so after a year and a half living with my aunties in Ocherius, Pimento Walk to be exact, St. Anne, I moved back home, and my mom was ill, and I, did what I had to do for her, blended up her cabbage into juice so she could have it, pureed, Irish potato, everything was blended in juice so she could eat something, because she wasn't eating, she was just skin and bones. And then, she came back around, and praise God, We had her for another couple of years before she passed, but God has been extremely good. While I came back to look after my mom, I got an interview. Would you imagine? As a secretary, an administrative secretary at Excelsior Community College in the special education department. I'm running away from it. So sometimes I find myself, I think I'm a Daniel. I should be an administrator, and unfortunately, or guess what? That's a field I'm in. I'm an administrator, but I ran away from it. So I started out at Excelsior Community College at about 19, so I jobbed there. And the day I started working, September 5th, 1995, was the day I started my schooling. So if you even don't get to go straight into university right after high school, don't give up on a university or a college education, because it helps, especially if you're coming from a poor background like myself and you need to stratify yourself. You need to place yourself out there where you can work and earn and take care of yourself and even your family. So that's what I did. This is just the tip of the iceberg of my story. There is so much more to me when I went to university, and even when I went on to do further studies. And you never stop studying, especially in my field. You're always accrediting yourself, being in associations and societies, because you want to be at the best. So my mantra is learning for life. So at Excelsior Community College, I went to school for 4 years, 4 nights per week, from 5 to 9, Mondays to Thursdays. I completed firstly my diploma in business studies, computer major, and then I went on to complete the final year, which was my associate degree in business studies. And while doing that, also I got more subjects. I got some subjects I didn't get at CXC level at high school, and I didn't, some of them, like even office procedure and typewriting, I think I just did them on my own, because that was part of my job. So I just did them on my own, because I was handling student records at the time. I moved from special education. Mrs. Rowe, oh my God, she used to measure my skirt with a ruler and said she's going to add to them. I love her so much. I saw her in 2019, December, Christmas, when I was in Jamaica, and I just ran into her home, ran into her room, and hugged her so tightly. Mrs. Rowe, I love you so much. I need to check in to see if all is well. Andrea, hi. That's her daughter. And Mrs. Rowe was my first, Nethlin Rowe was my first manager who took the time to counsel me and to, tell me to lengthen my skirts, and she's gonna put some inches on. So she was at special education unit at Excelsior Community College, and then that unit closed, and I went on to the Students Affairs unit, where I met such lovely persons. Paula Morgan, oh my God, Pretty P, we spoke the other day. She's so awesome. These were mentors. Mrs. Redwood, mentors. Mrs. Taylor, Miss Lyons, bless her soul. Oh, Ted Dwyer, oh my God. And it was an amazing time in my life. He says none of us, Ted Dwyer said, none of us should come into Excelsior Community College and leave the same way. This was a learning institution, and we were tasked to learn as we go along. My methods and how I got here are gonna be different from others, but I so appreciate the challenges that I had, because it has built my character. I thank you for listening to my story, my journal journeys at Patwataal. Thank you for logging on and subscribing and letting others know about Patwataal and her journeys. My journeys were exceptional. They built character in me, and it never ends there. There's so much more to the story, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it a later time. But let me just tell you one more thing. I was still living in the Waterhouse vicinity, that Caribbean section. Grenada Road, Barbados Road, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, you know. And in between those sections, you have a lot of gang war happening, which sometimes is still happening now. So I couldn't go to school at nights. I couldn't travel in. So sometimes when late catch you, you have to stay out. Eventually, in 1996, I moved away from the community. My parents are still there and my family. I moved away from the community and I went to Meadowbrook, and I was there for another little while. And then 1997, I moved to Woodlawn Avenue. Miss Zita and Janet and we lived in a cottage. Me and my friend Karen KK, bless her, we were roommates, and we had the cottage at the back. And we met Sister Doris Alden, Deaconess Alden, and she invited us to Arlene Gardner's Gospel Assembly, and that's where my next transition started. So I will tell you more about me, but I'm saying today, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, and it doesn't matter when you do what you need to do. Do you? I consistently say this. You want to get a college or a university education. If you're not in a position to do it right after high school, you can work and study like me. But you have to have diligence and perseverance, and you have to be direct in your, steps. You have to order your steps. You have to know what it is that you want. And not a lot of persons will say, I'm not academically, inclined. Whatever it is that you feel that you are blessed and you're purposed to do, go after it. If you don't get your degree when you're 20 and you get it when you're 28, it's the same degree. It just means that you're a little bit behind somebody else, but you'll get there. You'll get where you're supposed to go. And it doesn't stop here. I got mine at about 24, and I got my associate degree then. 22. Yeah, my associate degree at 22, 1998. So it was 3 years. 2 years for the diploma, 1 year for the associate degree. And during that time, I had a lot of other challenges along the way, which I'll tell you about in my next session. But education is still the key to success, and my father instilled in me that it was okay as a woman, as a black woman, as a young woman coming from an adverse situation, to be educated and to stratify yourself in this life. On my journal journeys, I thank you for listening, and I encourage you out there, you listening, it's never too late to do what you want to do. Write a book. I'm procrastinating that one for myself, but it's coming. Write a book. Do a TV show, do a series on who you are. Dance if you must. Be a dancer. Be a poet. Be an artist. Be a coach. But just continue to learn for life. You will hear more about my story in my next vlog, my next session. Thank you for logging on, for listening, for letting others know about Patwataal and her journal journeys. God bless you richly. Thank you. Bye for now.